Hello again, welcome back to Asgard, and welcome back to Enigmatica 2 Expert. So today we're going to be building the AE2 building back there behind me. We're going to get kind of the bulk of it done, but I will say the top here, the top part is not done. Also, I'll explain a couple other things that we're not going to get quite finished, but we do get a very big dent in it. Enough that we can actually start into AE2, and a lot of the build's going to come together as we start adding the components of AE2, because of course the majority of the build will be AE2 and automation and storage and stuff like that. So we're going to get the bulk of it done so that we can start actually setting stuff up in there, and then we'll kind of wrap things up as we add the AE2 components. Also, we're going to be going dragon hunting here soon, because bear in mind that this is the majority of it is AE2 section, and then below that we have like the ice dragon den. So we will be hunting some ice dragons before long. So anyways, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into it, and then I'll catch back up with you guys at the end. Okay, so of course we're picking back up just basically right after the last episode, where we built the elevator. We got that installed. Now I will say, it's been a long time since the last episode. I spent a massive amount of time looking for hardened ice, looking for a glacier biome. Had no luck. Ended up just adding a recipe, and I'll show you that recipe at the end. But yeah, I had a very frustrating time looking for the hardened ice. So basically we're going to be building this out in kind of a cylindrical fashion. This long open balcony type design. Altogether, of course, our elevator, excluding the top floor, has 3 floors. So we're going to have one floor, and I did rename these, but we're going to have one floor that's kind of our AE2 control, which will be the top floor. So if we need to come in here to do something, most of the time it's going to be on the top floor. So we can just right down to the top. Now, below that is going to be our auto crafting floor, so where the majority of our auto crafting is going to be housed, and we'll talk a little bit more about the layout and how that's going to work at the end of the video. But of course, that floor is going to have the most in it. It's going to take the most space, but I didn't want it just kind of like spread out and they're just AE2 stuff everywhere, so I tried to split it off into floors, so each floor has a clear, concise purpose. And then the bottom floor for the AE2 part is going to be what I labeled cold storage, and that's going to be for storage beyond what our storage building stores. So this is going to be things like dense storage for say metals, because right now our storage building, all it has is a drawer, and that's all it's ever going to have. We're not going to put void upgrades, but since we're going to be doing 5 times processing and auto mining and all these things, we're going to have a place kind of dedicated for black hole storage, for that really, really dense storage. So that bottom floor, once again, just like the top floor, there's probably not going to be a massive amount of things, not nearly as much as the auto crafting, but we're going to have that there. And then we're also probably going to have some ME drives on that floor, but we're going to have ME drives in other places as well. So those are going to be kind of visible throughout. So as far as the build goes, we are going to be using primarily frozen ice and fire blocks. So that'd be frozen gravel, frozen dirt, frozen cobblestone, and so on. Right here, by the way, I am building out the bottom of this, which is going to be kind of this frozen pond type area, this frozen water area. It's going to be filled with spring water and ice and all that. So, the build is primarily the frozen ice and fire blocks, permafrost, hardened ice, packed ice, regular ice, slate, and that's pretty much it. And some cave crystal, some blue cave crystal, cyan cave crystal, and then just kind of playing with architecture craft and different options. The railings that I'm doing are from the cathedral mod, so once again, if you don't have cathedral mod, you won't have those, but that is one of our added mods to the pack. And now we're going to start filling this with the hot spring water, and first I had it bunched in a thermal tank, and I had bucketed it up that way, but then I was like, oh yeah, let me grab a mechanism tank, and I was pumping it out of the thermal tank where I had it stored, and then using that mechanism tank to dump it out. And then I went back with mechanism tank. It was a whole lot easier, and just refilled and so on. So now we're going to build the kind of the opposite from where you walk in, the opposite section there. So it's going to be a bit different than when we walk in. This build, we've done a couple builds like this, basically just the same shape of this room. Though I will say the build that we built back on Project Ozone 2 when we did copper mode, that we built on was it on Pluto or something? We built a kind of this mob prison. It was all made of ice, kind of similar, but I think there's a lot more detail to this, and it's kind of, we're going to be as the build comes together, it's going to be taking on that kind of the AE2 and dragon type design. So, and we're going to be doing some cool chandeliers here in a little bit. I think they will be kind of cool as they come together. So, and these like hanging dragon skulls and stuff. Now, not all of the build is going to be housed within the dragon caves. We're not going to start building those just yet, but because I spent a long time just on this part. But whenever we build the dragon caves, that part's going to be a little bit more wild, and kind of break away from this architecture and stuff that we've got going on here. It's going to be more just ice caves with a big frozen waterfall. Not super big. I don't want to have another massive endless project, because we have a lot of projects on here and we're making progress on them. But that's kind of the nice thing about this series, is we can kind of just take our time, build a bit here and there, and kind of pop between builds. I actually quite enjoyed that personally. I did set up a cave illuminator up above and got all this lit up. I will probably be removing those the lights from the cave illuminator in time, but not just yet. Once I settle on lighting and get all that put in, then I'll get rid of those. So up top you can see I'm bringing down these slate spectrothiums or whatever they're called, and kind of bringing down these bits of ice, and those bits of ice that I brought down, they kind of have a neat texture, because what it is it's ice that's been chiseled to the Greek pillar or whatever, but it's one of those blocks that if you put on Block Craftery, it doesn't really render correctly. So what you end up with is kind of this like multi-pillar. There's basically like 4 pillars in a single block space. It's kind of weird, and I tend to like blocks like that for certain things, because they kind of have this like compressed design, and they just stand out. There's really nothing quite like them as far as block textures go. So when I find something like that, I'm like, ooh. So those Greek pillars, they do work for like Block Craftery. I haven't tried them with Architecture Craft. They would probably work with Architecture Craft in the same manner. So but yeah, we're just kind of building out a lot of kind of similar styles. I mean, once this is all finished, all these floors are going to look the same right now, right? Because it's all the same style. But as we start adding the components that actually go into it, I think that's when it'll actually kind of start making it a little bit more unique per floor, because for example, the auto crafting room is going to have these wings that kind of come out, where the different types of auto crafting are housed. Ideally, what I would like is auto crafting to the scale that we can craft things very, very quickly in bulk if we need them. Because this pack, we're kind of just having fun, right? We don't really care that much about the progression. Like, it's just kind of like whatever, which is usually how I view progression, because all it is just making things with more expensive recipes. Like, it's kind of whatever. So in this series, of course, since it's more of our build series, we're just kind of doing whatever progression we happen to do related to a build that we're working on. Minus, I guess, pushing for flux networks. You know, that was kind of a big progression push for the tech itself, but that was kind of to enable us to set up other things and not have to worry about running power everywhere. Because generally, flux networks and RF tools, power cells, stuff like that kind of bridges that gap, where normally if you build big, you get punished for it. IC2 and immersive engineering are the two worst about it because you lose power over distance. And then a lot of times, you have such a large space that you can't realistically run pipes that far and chunk load all those different pipes and things. So flux networks and stuff like that's kind of a good workaround to enable us to build big. So that's why we kind of pushed that. But back to what I was talking about, though, is with this build, we're going to kind of just go like we have with everything else, just go big. And like with our ore processing and stuff, go to a point that there's really no point in it being that big or that fast or anything, but just kind of do it for fun. So AE2, of course, is kind of an exciting moment. It's something I've kind of been just waiting until, instead of pushing it like we did in our first playthrough of Enigmatica. We pushed AE2 actually not super fast, but decently fast. And on here, we've kind of just beat around the bush and taken our time getting to it. And now it's kind of, now we're going to start pushing into it. And so it's kind of exciting because it is going to make basically filling out these buildings. That's really what it comes down to, is filling out these buildings and being able to auto craft and just order bulk amounts of decorations. Things like armor stands, painting, stuff that I really don't want to have to sit and manually craft all this. It's just going to make it so much easier, not to mention the massive amount of just junk I get after every building project. So I have backpacks full of just junk, and my inventory just full of junk after doing this build. I still have some stuff from our ore processing build in one of my backpacks. It's just, I end up with just a lot of just little bitty odd and end junk, and then it's hard to find it once I dump it into storage. It's a little bit easier now because stuff gets sent to the drawers that it needs to go to, but then a lot of things don't, and then they get kind of mixed up, and it's hard for me to find them to continue on with build projects. So anyways, I'm kind of rambling, kind of talking about other stuff other than the build this episode, but it's pretty straightforward. Just building out these floors. Now, I know I mentioned in the like right before the outro, because it almost slipped my mind, but that oak wood there, it's not going to stay oak wood, no fear. It's going to be ME drives that run up through there, but I don't have ME drives right now, so I put in the oak wood as kind of a placeholder. Also, we need a lot of dragon skulls, so we are going to be going dragon hunting here very, very soon. Try to get ourselves a bunch of dragon skulls. Now, the windows here where the elevator is, what I've done is I've got window frames made out of permafrost from Architecture Craft, and I filled those with cyan glass panes. Behind that, I have cave crystals, because cave crystals can be replicated, which is quite nice. We're actually going to be using a lot of those here soon. And then behind that cave crystal, I have a mixture of ice and packed ice. So kind of end up with this like very layered section there. And we're actually going to be doing a lot of stuff like that, where we have ice, and then behind that ice is going to be snow and permafrost and things like that behind sections of ice or cave crystal or glass. That will become, I think, more apparent. Like this today, we didn't do any of that, but we will be. But that's going to be more part of when we start putting in the AE2 stuff, because this build, what we've done today, is literally just the architecture part, and not kind of where that wild ice and snow and weathered effects are starting to creep into this build. We just want just the general architecture. So once we kind of start getting everything placed out and figuring out, okay, we have this much space to work with, or we need something here, that's when we're going to add the layers of the ice, and then we're going to add kind of like ice hanging down off the ceiling and things like that. Kind of those little bits of detail. That's kind of like the furnishings to some degree for this build. Which is, if you've watched my other series where we've done kind of these wilder builds where stuff's kind of coming in, actually like the magic tree, that's how I built that. I built out the basic part of it, and then we kind of come back through and add the wilder part and the kind of just the blocks that kind of contrast against it and things like that. So now here at the bottom we have some sections with kind of these lower ceilings, and we use stairs instead of elevators, and that was purposeful, so that we kind of have this, okay, you're going down to the ice dragon part. It's a little bit older. Okay, so we got quite a bit done, but of course the top isn't done, and there's a couple spots we need to talk about down here. I did update this a little bit, so we have control center, crafting and development, and cold storage. Let's go ahead and head on down to the control center, which most of these floors are pretty similar. There's a lot of junk sitting around from working on this. A lot of this is empty, like here, all the way down through. Pretty much all over. That's where AE2 components and auto crafting and storage, you know, based on what the different floors are, where these different components are going to go. And as you can tell, we need dragon skulls, ideally like stage 3 and below, to start filling out this with dragon skulls, because it is part AE2 and part Ice Dragon Den. We're going to do something else with the Fire Dragon Den, something kind of in that same theme. So we're going to have maybe some kind of forge, smeltery type area. Of course, our ore processing system is elsewhere, so we're not going to use that for the Fire Dragon, but we're going to do something kind of in that same vein as the AE2 stuff. Also, cave crystals can be replicated. So very, very nice there. Also worth noting, the Hardened Ice, I looked and I looked and I looked and I looked and I looked for probably 20 plus hours. I don't know, it was a massive amount of time. Like, it was days that I would get on here and search, you know, not a full like 24-hour day, but like I would hop on here consecutively for days looking for a glacier biome. I even scanned around. So, for example, if you notice at the very bottom, like it says this is Birch Forest Hills region. If we come up, there's a beach, there's an ocean. We can scroll around this map and try to find a glacier biome just using JEI. So I did that a bit with just the map, and I was using... of course, I used the Nature's Compass. I increased the radius that it searched. I also flew out for fairly long distances and would search. There's a lot of tundras, a lot of snowy forest. Probably great places to hunt dragons, but unfortunately, I have yet to find any glaciers. So, I ended up adding a recipe for Hardened Ice that's just 4 packed ice. Unfortunately, a lot of times packs, they overlook building materials. I wish they would get more of a focus when packs are developed, but unfortunately, generally they're overlooked, and so I just added a recipe in for that because we needed a bit of it for our build down here. So not a whole lot to talk about because, of course, we haven't started putting AE2 into this. This is just basically the shell of the structure. We need more dragon skulls. I'm going to put this somewhere else. It's not going to stay here, but... and then I did these hanging, almost like icy chandeliers, kind of coming down, hanging off of these slate spelothians. And I am going to add some more kind of hanging from the ceiling in places as we bring the build together, based on kind of where we have space and stuff. You know, I kind of want those icy bits kind of hanging down. I don't know if I'm going to go with those or actual just ice with architecture craft. I'm not sure. But try to focus on ice and ice type stuff. So most of it is slate. Of course, that's not ice, but it does kind of have that bluish, kind of in the same vein of color. A lot of permafrost, a lot of hardened ice. The various types of frozen ice and fire stuff. So frozen gravel, frozen dirt. If you look extremely closely, sometimes you can notice a difference. But generally... they look pretty similar, so I just kind of interchanged them at will. Also some permafrost bricks, and I did do a little bit of ice. We'll talk about that because I didn't want it to melt. That's my biggest concern about ice, is it melting. But block craftery, I was able to use ice in places and not worry about it melting. Is how I did that. And then we'll probably add some like ornamental type detail and stuff to kind of contrast this as the as the structure comes together. Of course, it's going to have a lot of AE2 and stuff going on. And then this will kind of come back around and kind of have this far end balcony. In some ways, it kind of reminds me, at least at the moment, until we build out these side sections, because it's just kind of cylindrical. It kind of reminds me to some degree of our build back on Project Ozone 2, our Kappa mode playthrough of that, because we had that one mob area. It's quite a bit different though. It's just the shape is kind of similar, and it's all made out of like ice. And it was on an icy planet that we did that. Now if we head down, Control Center, by the way, is going to be kind of the hub of our AE2 system, so all of our control type stuff is going to be here. We're going to have the majority of our terminal access. We are going to have shutoffs for various setups that we have. We're going to have kind of an ender chest bay, so we can monitor ender chests and have all of our input outputs for those ender chests. Stuff like that's going to be up here. So that's kind of the purpose of that. Crafting and development is pretty self-explanatory. It is going to be crafting. So I just wanted a fancier name for it, honestly. So crafting and development sounds good. We may end up facading this block, I think, probably. But this is kind of how I did these half cylinders down through here, just for the between floors. End up probably doing something with lighting, but I haven't made up my mind. So right now I set up a cave illuminator up above here, so I'll have to go back through and remove these when we actually change out the lighting, probably, because I kind of want it to be a bit darker in places and stuff, and kind of have that cold kind of cave feel. But this floor is pretty much identical. It's a little bit shorter than the floor above it. This kind of taller grand opening up here. The ceilings are a little bit different, but the ceilings aren't finished. They're going to have ice kind of hanging down off of those, and then this just kind of wraps around just like the floor above. Now for the last AE2 floor we have is cold storage, and this is where we are going to have kind of the bulk of our storage. Now granted, we still have that big storage building, we're still going to be using that, but this is going to be for denser storage, and things like black hole tanks, stuff like that is going to be set up in this. And this one of course is a little bit different. We'll pop down and I'll talk about that. But as far as the layout, it is once again pretty much identical to the floor above it at the moment. Of course, once we actually start adding things into this, it'll be a bit different. So like some of these floors up here are going to go off into wings. The control center is going to be pretty much you walk around and have immediate access to everything. Crafting and development is going to be wings that kind of come off, and then this floor is going to be pretty much you come around and have access to everything. So an entire floor for control, probably a bit much, but we're going to try to make it all fit in. And this room, it just kind of runs around once again. Okay, so now actually leading down into the dragon lair, or what's going to be the dragon den, I'm actually planning on bringing this out back behind here, bringing it out a bit, and actually having a lot of our dragon related stuff off in this direction, not super far, but we are going to go back with it a little bit. That's why I haven't actually finished out this section here, and you can see the back here of everything. So this roof will kind of come out, and it's going to become a little bit more wild cave-ish than kind of this cleaned out structure that we've got going on here. Of course, we will have the ice and stuff hanging down, but it's still kind of finished out, and this is going to be more like wild cave that comes back. So right here we would be able to continue walking from here, is kind of my thought on that. Now right down here we have this area here. This is going to be open, and we're going to have it kind of come over, I think, but I'm not 100% sure. It depends on how we bring this stuff back and how we end up running all of that. But my plan is to have it open so you can kind of see off into the cave section, because my idea is the cave section is not going to be super big. We don't need something massive, but I do kind of want a big frozen waterfall that's kind of running off, you know, at a distance from here. So we'll be able to see that as we come down. And then if we head on down, we'll be able to walk through here to the dragon area, and then we'll have, once we set up the frozen waterfall, we're going to have water that kind of trickles through down through here, so running back in along through there. and then this will kind of overlook the water. And on the other side is where that water is headed, which is kind of this little like frozen pond area here. So it's going to have kind of trickled through on this side into here, taking an absolute ton of hot spring water. So as you saw in the build, I filled out the bottom here with a mix of packed ice, frozen gravel, and then there's kind of these like ice covered rock structures that are kind of out in here. And then bits of this has frozen over with ice, which I did with Block Craftery. So ice and the cracked ice around through here. Just kind of break it up a little bit. It actually looks kind of cool on the map. So if you take a look here, that's kind of what it looks like on the map at the moment. And then this is going to kind of open up into wings. This is all going to be kind of dragon, ice dragon related stuff back through here. And then ice dragon type decor. I'm also thinking about putting some stone mob statues, maybe set up something for the gorgons. I think there's actually, yeah, there's some spawners that can spawn gorgons, so we might just mass spawn gorgons to get a bunch of gorgon heads and put some statues in here. So we'll see. But yeah, that's pretty much where the build is at the moment. So we could start actually setting up AE2 stuff. And start actually delving into AE2, and we're going to go hunt some ice dragons here before long. Now we still have to build the top, which I think will be fun, and those replicatable ice crystals are going to be a big part, or cave crystals are going to be a big part of the top of the structure, because I kind of have some ideas for those that I think is going to be kind of fun. But yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed it. I think we're going to end this episode out here, and then next episode when we come back, we'll start dabbling into some AE2, I think. Maybe spend a couple episodes on that, and then we're probably going to go ice dragon hunting. Because I would like to at least get a dent into this building, like a pretty good sized dent, and start filling out some of this structure. Because right now it's just kind of a barren shell at the moment. Like it's waiting for things. So, and the wood back here, by the way, if you're wondering the purpose of the oak wood, this is actually going to be ME drives that span this wall. But currently I don't have any ME drives, and I don't have an AE system, so it's just oak wood for the time being. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. If you did, as always, be sure and hit that like button, and go ahead and subscribe if you're not already, to stay updated with when new videos come out, and I hope to see you guys next time. So until then, as always, do take care, stay safe, I'll see you guys then.